Mic is hot.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert Lynn. I'm the CEO of SandDirect. We're very excited to have our latest installment of our Tech Talk series with SandDirect. These talks are produced every 2 to 4 weeks and are designed to highlight new technology, products, trends, or anything else in the storage that's going on in the storage marketplace today. Today, we are focusing on 10 gig E and how a 10 gig environment can be optimized for your software-defined data center. And on that note, we've invited Rich Light, the principal systems engineer for the Southeast with QLogic. So we're excited to have Rich join us today. First, a quick intro. If you haven't been on these tech talks and know of SandDirect, a little intro of who we are. SandDirect is a comprehensive storage solutions provider. We've been in business for over 20 years, always focusing on storage-specific solutions. We operate in a virtual environment, so we're a little different in the industry in that we are basically a phone call away from discussing and configuring any storage solution issues that you might have. All of our storage architects are on the phone, and we're configuring solutions pretty much immediately when we engage with you guys on the phone. That being said, we're quick to design solutions, we're quick to quote, and we can get systems installed in a very quick amount of time. So that being said, we're always looking for the latest advancements in technology, and we're very excited to have QLogic with us today to talk about 10 gig E. Really quick, a little housekeeping. If you would like to see a replay of this, if you miss anything, if you have to get up and walk away for a second, we always record our presentations and we put them on our YouTube channel. As well as if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at 866-463-3372 to talk to any of our storage architects if you have any follow-up questions as well. With that, I will hand it over to Rich Light with QLogic. Rich?
Thank you, Ron. Hi, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about the new QLogic 10 gig Ethernet network adapters. We have a couple of variants of these. Primarily, we're going to focus on the 3400 intelligent Ethernet adapter. There is a version as well that's optimized for converged networks for FCE or iSCSI, and we'll talk about that briefly, but specifically, we want to drill into the features of the 3400 today. So this could help you in several ways. We think that the need exists in the market for new Ethernet cards that have advanced features. We've been working hard on these, and there's actually some acquisitions we did, which I'll touch on briefly, to get us ahead of the pack and give features to our partners and end users that no one else in the industry is able to offer. So QLogic 10 gig Ethernet adapters empower you to break through virtual LAN scaling barriers. We'll talk about that in some detail. Drive secure multi-tenant connectivity to new levels. Two keywords there, secure and multi-tenant. A lot of attention in the industry to this and a lot of requests from our customers for those specific features. Overcoming cost and infrastructure compatibility barriers. A big component of every project that we're approached about is cost, and then does it work with my environment? So we'll talk about how those concerns are addressed with this product. And one of the big bang for the buck components, delivering better performance in virtual machine density. More and more we see customers compressing their environment, doing more with less, and these cards are a great play in doing that. So who is QLogic? QLogic is the company that builds the solutions for the most advanced networks on the planet. We are an industry leader in I/O connectivity. For many years, we've been the #1 market share leader in fiber channel with over 16 million fiber channel ports shipped and in use. With our acquisition this year of Broadcom, we already had existing Ethernet products in our portfolio. We purchased Brocade's adapter business earlier this year as well. That's mentioned at the bottom here. But by those acquisitions and by our own market share, we are now the #2 player in Ethernet in the market, second only to Intel. And Intel, of course, embeds a lot of that Ethernet shipping chip products with the server CPUs. So it is a pretty large market, but we are the big player here with Intel. And I think you'll see after the presentation that there are some features that we offer that Intel not only doesn't offer, they have no plans to offer. And I'll explain why that's important and how it can help you. QLogic was founded in 1992. The company is based in Aliso Viejo, California. And one of the key things that resonates with our customers is we have 77 consecutive quarters of profitability. We have a very disciplined expense management team, strong financials, and we're definitely in it for the long haul. And acquisitions like the ones we've done this year have started to get a lot of attention in the market for good reason. So these acquisitions, I actually work with some of the folks that were on the Brocade adapter team, and they are part of our management team. And the Broadcom team as well, when we brought in the Broadcom products and all of the intellectual property, we picked up some key talent there as well. Our new CEO didn't come in through those acquisitions, but he was part of the VMware management team at EMC, a guy named Prasad Rampali. But the Broadcom team, we brought over some folks that he had worked with at Intel in the past. One of the key ones being our chief engineer, Mamet, who runs the Ethernet team now. He was part of the team that designed the PCI Express standard at Intel many years ago. So a lot of big engineering talent in QLogic, and we continue to build on that. So the company itself is about 1,000 employees worldwide. We have operations around the world. Our main headquarters are in Aliso Viejo, California, in beautiful Orange County. And we developed our products in the US and also in Israel and India. And we have manufacturing in China and Malaysia. And the blue dots you see on the map are our actual fulfillment centers. And we can ship products anywhere in the world, usually same day. We have a big team of distributors and partners. SanDirect is one of our best partners here in this region, and they're a strong advocate for our products, and we partner with them, a lot of certifications that they do on our behalf, and we're very glad to work with partners like that that are a great advocate for our products and part of our support team. One key thing I want to point out here, if you look at the pie chart on the upper right, our company is 68% engineering. That's something that we intentionally do, and we actually turn around and put 1/3 of our revenue every year back into R&D, and we're one of the few hardware computer manufacturers to do that, and we think it shows in our products. We have great products that have a great reputation and a lot of features, and customers find them very useful and very dependable. So where do we sit in the data center? QLogic is the adapter company. We do a lot of the connectivity at that point in the data center, but on the left side of the chart, this is the initiator part of the data center. We have a lot of fiber channel adapters, which we're very well known for. We have a lot of Ethernet adapters. We have a lot of CNAs. Now those come in many different versions. The traditional ones that you think of probably are the PCI cards. You pop them in the socket, put the little captive screw on one end, and it's in a rack and tower server. We make a ton of those. But more and more, we make a lot of LOM and NIC and daughter cards for blades and mezzanine servers or special form factor servers that are often smaller. And we partner with the OEMs to make those. We make them for all the major OEMs. And we also sell our PCI cards in the channel directly through partners like SanDirect. And that gives customers a great option when they're doing special projects, or if they want to build a very customized environment, even a white box type environment. Our products, along with partners such as SanDirect, are a great solution for that kind of use. So in the middle of the page, we've got the fiber channel switching or the Ethernet switching part of the environment. So moving left to right, in the middle, this is the middle point. And if it were a house, this would be the wiring in the walls or the plumbing that connects everything together and makes it all work. And QLogic makes our own switches in some cases. We also make a lot of the ASICs that go into switches for other companies. So the good thing about this, as we build through this page, you can see when you've got QLogic on one end, QLogic in the middle, and then on the far right, you've actually got the disk arrays or the other connecting points you're going to. You've got a fully seamless solution with one vendor making all the components that connect everything together. No matter whose label is on the outside of the box, you've got interoperability that's second to none, and the disk arrays over on the right, the new flash arrays from Pure Storage have our ASICs, EMC arrays have our ASICs, NetApp arrays, Hitachi. Most storage vendors you can think of are using QLogic in the back door or the back panel of that disk array to give very solid and reliable connections to all the servers and all the workstations and desktops in your environment. So let's get to the card. The new card that's coming out, the 3400 card and the 8400 as well. These cards are designed for today's software-defined data center. The 3400 series is just a rock star for Ethernet performance and features. It is the best available performance-wise, and surprisingly, it's going to come in at a price point that's actually not only competitive with the offering from Intel, in many cases we can actually undercut that price. So partners can give you specific details on what's available to you, but we've designed these intentionally to be very cost competitive and show customers the features that they can get at a price point that makes sense for them. The other card, and I've got it grayed out because it's not the focus of the presentation, but our 8400 card is going to do everything the 3400 does, period, full stop. And we add in offload engines for iSCSI and FCOE. We're unique in that regard. We give you a choice between a card that's just an Ethernet rockstar, virtualization rockstar, and it can do storage functions too, or a card that has even more horsepower to do storage work. So if you want to talk about that, we might do a webinar later about that with SanDirect, but for today, let's just talk about the 3400 series cards and just keep in the back of your mind that the 8400 card can do everything the 3400 can. It just has a little extra juice for storage functions. So QLogic's been doing Ethernet for 13 generations. We've been making them for the OEMs for most of the server generations they've been through as well. We OEM with HP, Dell, IBM, and others. The others list includes names like Fujitsu and Supermicro that are more common in either the Asia market or the cloud market. Industry-leading storage performance, bar none. We make no apologies for that. We work very hard with all of the storage vendors and put engineers in their labs. They have engineers in our labs, and we share that knowledge with all of these vendors to increase their performance so that collectively QLogic and all of these storage vendors can increase the performance for the customers and do more transactions, do them more quickly, and do them in a rock-solid environment. We support multi-tenant architectures. That's going to be really important if you're trying to virtualize your own data center, or if perhaps you sell services where you do cloud for another group or customers. And if you want to push multi-tenant, you've got to have security boundaries. Our cards enable you to do that, and we'll talk about that in some detail on a later slide. And then the most exciting thing, in my opinion, is the features that you can get now. As someone who's managed virtualized environments in the past, sometimes struggled where there's talk of a feature or talk of being able to do tunneling, for example, and protect the pipe so it doesn't collapse under heavy strain. Those features are here. They're here now, and they're here on the QLogic 3400. So the 3400 then is going to let you control with 10 gig migration costs. It's going to let you control multi-adapter management. We've got specific software that manages all of our cards in your environment. You can reach out from one server or workstation and manage all those cards. It's going to let you optimize your quality of service. It's going to give you better application performance. It does that in several ways. One of the key ways is by freeing up the server CPU to do what you bought it to do, to actually do work for you rather than manage storage. Our cards pull the work into the card and off the server CPU to free that horsepower up on the server CPU. Scale, unsurpassed virtual machine density. If you want to push servers through the pipe, more servers through a server, you've got to have the best connections to do that. This card's going to give you a very robust environment with a lot of extra growing room, and it will be a card you can count on for years to come. VLAN limits, huge discussion point with our customers. IPv6 has everyone scratching their heads wondering how they're going to be safe in this environment and how they're going to exploit it. You want to build more VLANs, this card gives you the flexibility to do that. So then the 8400 card is everything we just talked about along with those transaction offload engines. So Both of these cards are going to let you reduce your server CPU burden. The 8400 lets you do it in a much more aggressive way. If you want to use Ethernet for fiber channel over Ethernet or iSCSI, there is no better solution than the 8400. It's truly proven to be at least 2 times better than Intel, and that's a conservative number. We've got charts on our website that show you the data from earlier this year, and you can compare it for yourself. Application performance, even more with the 8400 if you're doing storage functions and maximize virtual machine density. Again, if you're leveraging the card for that, it's going to let you maximize that even more. So the features then on the 3400, let's get into those one by one here. So one of the first features I want to talk about is virtual extensible LAN, or VXLAN. And VXLAN and network virtualization, generic routing encapsulation, I'm glad there's an acronym for that, it's a mouthful, NVGRE, offloads of those two functions enable flexible placement of multi-tenant resources throughout the data center to support the creation of, yes, this is not a typo, 16 million logical networks. So if you think about the way that you could leverage that and the way you can start connecting all of your sites together and plan for future growth, this card gets you there. And this card is built with registers and functions in the chipsets and the IC chips to enable that kind of addressing. It's a huge number, but this card's ready for that, and it's ready for that for years to come. So by using those functions, you can really start to exploit the future growth that you want to do, or maybe even selling more services without having to beef up your servers. This card gives you that power. And this is specifically built for the software-defined data center of the future. So next, let's talk about quality of service and network partition, or NPAR. So quality of service, for those of you in the audience that are Ethernet users, you've probably encountered QoS before, storage administrators as well. This is a way for you to not only put multiple segments of traffic on one pipe. If you think about it, if you look at the card on the page here, each one of these jacks on the card is an RJ45 jack where you can pop in a copper cable. Out of that jack, you can say that one cable and that one jack hole going to the switch port is going to be able to have complete control of that pipe. If you want to pump through that pipe virtual machines, different types, or if you want to pump through that application traffic of different types, you can choose how much bandwidth each one of those gets. And that's really important when the bridge from 1 gig to 10 gig E. If you're suddenly jumping on a pipe that's 10 times wider or 10 times faster, what do you do with all that power? Do you just stuff one data stream through there continuously and do it with great gusto and vigor? Or do you say, you know what, I've got all this bandwidth now I never had before. Let's fully utilize this cable, just in the same way that you've taken VMware or Hyper-V and said, you know, I've got 100% of CPU power to play with. The way I used to do things would give me 20%. You know what, I can stuff 5 servers through one and virtualize that environment. With QoS, you can do that with the bandwidth on the network. We give physical level traffic isolation. And one key point to remember is this is all happening on the card. You're not telling the server CPU in Hyper-V or VMware or whatever hypervisor you're using to control this and to sacrifice valuable server CPU cycles to do it. On our card, you can do it on the card itself. In fact, you can even boot into the BIOS of the card when it's booting up and do this without an OS being loaded. If you want to pre-build an environment for a customer, or if you've got a big deployment you want to roll out, you can do this on the card, and there's even ways to script it as well, giving you great control. Also, you can isolate virtual machines from each other, and that's part of QoS's dashboarding control. With NPAR, network partition, this is where you can take that one jack and that one cable and make it appear, it says up to 8 because they're talking about a dual port card where you can get 4 out of each one, but we call those physical functions. You can take that jack and say, I want that 10 gig pipe to have part of the pipe used for exchange email administration. I want part of the pipe to be used for file and print in a small workstation environment. I want part of that pipe to be used for storage. You can actually run storage over both of these cards, the 34 and 8400, but you get the transactional offload engines and the extra horsepower with the 8400. But if you're coming from 1 gig iSCSI, you could actually use this card and use part of this pipe and not even have to go to the extra cost of an 8400 if that fits for you. So, and one of the key points here on the bottom of the page, this is platform switch and OS agnostic. It doesn't matter whose operating system you're using, doesn't matter whose Ethernet switch you buy, doesn't matter whose Cat6 cables you use. This is all done on the card, and it's completely agnostic and completely under your control. So another function then is SRIOV, single root IO virtualization. Single root IO virtualization lets you have multiple virtual devices where each can be dedicated to a VM. So if you think through this, you've got your hypervisor, Hyper-V or VMware, you're building virtual machines. How do you know how much juice you're going to get on the network or how much bandwidth you're going to get on the network without control? This is what gives you that control. It can work through the card to give you that control. So in addition to tuning how much server CPU you can get, how much disk space you can get, you can now tune how much network bandwidth you get or what sort of utilization you get. And by doing this in the card and the card's ASICs and chips doing all the work, you're taking that workload off the server CPU again. So again, this lets you go into an existing environment. By replacing the cards you've got with these cards, you can free up a lot more resources in that environment by giving the server CPU some cycles back. Or if you're deploying a new greenfield environment, you can actually spend less on server CPU and RAM resources and disk resources by getting a card that's going to cost you less than the Intel version of the card too. So just more ways we're trying to help our customers do more with less. Data center-wide virtual machine requirements can now be satisfied with fewer physical server resources. That's our main goal here, is to make you have more available for lower cost. So one of the questions we get a lot is, so I can do SRIOV, I can get virtual machines to actually control the card or use part of the card. How do I know that that's secure? Very good question. We use something called SRIOV security. So we have trusted and untrusted functions for SRIOV. So physical functions are trusted. Those things where I talked about, like slicing up the pipe into 4 chunks and 1 jack port. Virtual functions are untrusted. So only trusted functions can go down and actually leverage the card's hardware and make changes that are more lasting and permanent and could intrude on another slice of the network pipe. An untrusted function won't have that power. It's going to be something you manage and control, and you protect them from each other and from other virtual machines. This is part of the tunneling technology that we have in our cards. So by doing all these things, what you're really getting to is being able to scale your virtual machine density while reducing your server CapEx. With full line rate performance, and what that means is if it's a 10 gig E-pipe, you can actually pump through a full 10 gigs of pipe on our connections. Some of the other cards that are available on the market, although they advertise line rate performance, you might find that your performance diminishes because they can't actually offer that under load, especially when you start stacking all these functions. We've intentionally overbuilt the cards with the frame registers and the CPUs to have extra power to let you fully leverage that card, leverage all the functions, and let it run simultaneously. What we actually do, you can't see it on the card because of the heat sink over it, but we build storm engines on each of those ports. And the storm engines have about 8 little mini computers in the IC chips, and each one of those acts like its own little server in the storm engine. And by using that technology and building it that way, we've built these cards to do all these functions today, and through firmware upgrades in the future, you're going to be able to add more features as they come online and become available. And we always build those to the IEEE standards or the Ethernet Alliance standards so that these work with all of the servers and all the Ethernet switches out there. So we intentionally build these way. We have qualification testing completed with VMware vSphere, Citrix Xen Server, and Microsoft Windows Hyper-V in a multi-tenant environment. And these are adapter offloads. So I already talked a bit about the storage offloads, but even without the 8400 card, if you just get the 3400, these cards are going to do all these functions and adapter offloads, and that specifically means for you, it's going to do it on the card and not consume the server CPU cycles to do it. So we think that's important for customers because this is going to free up those server CPU resources for applications and end users. So one of the coolest things we've done, in my opinion, is we've got this card, the 3400, available in just about any kind of media you want to use it with. So you've got the standard RJ45. You probably already have a ton of it in your data center. If you like that environment, you have the cable vendor you trust to know, and you just want to stick with something you're familiar with, we don't force you to choose to switch to optics and with the SFPs. However, if you like SFPs, especially if you're going to use the card for storage functions and you want to be able to have better protection and security, you can buy our cards with the SFP connections already in the cages, or you can get your own. And we've got a standard that we can quote on our website to tell you which connectivity options to work with. But bear in mind that if you go with the QLogic solution, you get that flexibility. If you go with the other cards that are out there, you won't get that flexibility. You're going to be forced into one or the other. So unshielded twisted pair is what 10 base T is, using Cat6 cables. If you use those, you're going to get the most flexible solution and the most cost-effective solution. But if you like fiber optic cables and glass, we can sell you cards with those preloaded, or you can put your own in there if they meet the standard. So let's sum it all up then. You've got the cards from QLogic on the right over here, the 8400 on the far right column. That's our card with the offload engines. Notice how close it is to the 3400 feature chart next to it. So one key thing to bear in mind is the 8400 does not do the 10 base T connectivity. We have deduced with our OEM providers and our customers that customers that want storage functions almost always want it on fiber optics. If you want to do storage, you can do it with the 3400. You just won't get those monster offload engines that are willing to speed things up for you. Energy efficient Ethernet, big selling point these days. More and more customers tell us that they're being squeezed for power, even to the point where they're getting rebates and incentives from their power company if they buy things that comply to a certain standard. This card is going to give you that option and that power. All these functions, again, if you look at the QLogic cards and then look to the left at the Intel offerings, the 520, it's a little long in the tooth. It's probably not long for the market. The 540 is what's actively being sold. If you check the chart, 3 check marks versus a bunch of red X's for the 540. The 710 is what Intel will be selling, but they're not selling yet. And even that card, you can't get it in 10 base T. You can't do NPAR with it, and you don't get the offload engines. They're selling you a middle-of-the-road card that doesn't do Ethernet very well. It does storage very poorly. With QLogic, you get the option to have a card that's built to do either one. So that wraps it up for me. And I think, Robert, I'm going to let you take it back over.
Yeah, I had to put my mic back on. Great. Well, thank you very much, Rich. We do have a handful of questions from folks out there listening to the webinar. So I'll just jump right into them because there's some great ones, and I think there's things that you touched on, but it'll probably give you an opportunity to dig into detail more, and also kind of talk about some real world examples and solution sets with the QLogic line and 10 gig in general. The first one is, where does 10 gig FCOE win out over fiber channel and iSCSI at a 10 gig level?
Great question. Thank you. So where we see 10 gig FCOE really getting used is much where fiber channel is, where there's a need for availability, for mission critical performance and reliability, and where customers are using something that's sensitive. It's the core data, or their core of what they do. They'll often choose FCOE or fiber channel. iSCSI comes in at a lower price point. It's has one cool advantage, actually. It is natively routable, and it was built that way from the start. So for someone who's doing storage over a long distance and isn't as concerned about performance, they might want to play with iSCSI and bring that to bear.
Great. Next one is specific to the QLogic adapters. Do the QLogic adapters require special fiber modules to work?
Another great question. So the good news is that we build the cards to the standard of the various governing bodies, and by doing that, we can let you put in other fiber modules if they comply to the standard. Of course, we will sell the card preloaded with optics as one of our variants, or we have empty cages that we can sell you optics for, and we're very flexible in that regard.
Great. Next one is around disaster recovery. How can the solution replace monthly off-site DR data sets and off-site data archiving in a way that is more cost-effective than tape?
Great. And I've actually got many years in disaster recovery. That was part of what I did in the past career. So I can tell you from experience that I'm seeing more and more customers starting to do storage solutions that are disk-based rather than tape-based. And this question doesn't necessarily say tape. When they say off-site data archiving, that's the first thing I think of. And it does say tape at the end there. I'm corrected. But with these kind of adapters coming in at a very attractive price point and doing storage of whatever tier that you need or ever speed that you need, partners like SandDirect can help you zero in on a storage solution that can completely replace tape and give you much faster retrieval and even do lifetime archiving if you need it to.
Great. Sounds great. All right, here's one. What switches does QLogic recommend with your adapters?
Great. All modern 10 gig E switches are going to work. They're going to be built to the standard of the governing body of the Ethernet Alliance. I would personally recommend that you match your Ethernet switches to whatever level you've got for your storage and your servers. And by that, I mean your source support, your availability. You know, if you've got a 5 nines environment, you don't want to put in consumer grade switches. And partners like SandDirect can really help you get the big picture there and fully see how to match up the adapters to the storage, to the switches, and everything in between.
Right. So you don't want to create latency, with your switch when everything else is running on a higher level.
Exactly right.
Gotcha. And to Rich's point, SandDirect does carry a full line of switches that work very well with the QLogic line, and we can certainly help you with that as well. Next question is, what's next? That's a great question. Are we going 100 gig after 10?
Yeah, we're actually already testing in the lab, and we've got 100 gig working, and it's actually coming in above the standard that we set for acceptable performance. So it may be rewritten to something exceeding that, but we already sell solutions that are 20 gig with some of our OEM partners, and we have 40 gig coming out next year.
Gotcha. Great. Are there any written and graphed performance metrics available?
Yes, there are. We've got on our website the Demartech test that was done earlier this year that will give a very detailed comparison of our cards to the Intel and Emulex offerings.
Okay. How about CPU overhead as it relates to the adapters?
It's another great question. I'm glad somebody asked that because our cards are actually doing the opposite. They're relieving CPU overhead by pulling the work down into the card and off the server CPU. And that not only frees up server CPU, it also frees up RAM resources where it was doing that work before.
Okay. This next question is going to be an interesting one because I think this is probably a question that a lot of people have. How does this, the 10 gig technology integrate with existing or into existing infrastructure?
Another great one. So with our cards in your existing infrastructure, if they're PCI Gen 3 or better, these current cards that we're talking about are going to work great. We have cards that work in PCI Gen 2 if customers are still running servers with that architecture. But then moving downstream from the actual card into the cable, you really want to have Cat 6 cable or better. And you can have a vendor test that if you're not sure. If you moved into a site and you weren't given the spec sheets for the cabling in the walls, that's easily testable, and they can tell you if it's ready for Cat 6, which will run 10 gig E. And then again, if you want to run RJ45, you go that route with the Cat 6. If you want to run optics and glass cables, you can continue using the ones you've got, the 50 micron.
And that kind of goes into our next question. I think you touched on it somewhat, which is, somebody's interested in understanding the overview of how this could better enhance the current network they have. So not only integration, but enhancement.
Yep. You can definitely enhance your existing environment with this technology. A lot of the features we've talked about and a lot of the functions are going to be an enhancement. getting from 1 gig to 10 gig E is just going to be a huge step for any company. The good news is it's become a lot more approachable price-wise in the last few years. But me personally, if you want to go into that at a much deeper level, I'll be glad to help you assess your environment and do a tech brief with you and your team. So my contact details will be available after the Hangouts, and I can go into that deeper with any of you that want to go into it.
Great. And last question is a good one as well. It's something that I know a lot of data storage managers and IT directors and everybody in between has struggled with over the years since its inception. Is what is your strategy? What's QLogic's strategy for increasing FCOE adoption?
Good question. So it's not a question I can directly answer as this is how we're going to increase FCOE adoption. It's a little more complex than that. QLogic continues to sell fiber channel. We will for the very long-term future. We have contracts that go out in excess of a decade. And we see more and more companies that are at a point of growth or at a determining point for storage that will want fiber channel. But we see more and more companies doing FCOE because they've crossed over from just simple in-server storage or disk systems attached to a server directly to wanting something a little more complex. FCOE is going to give them that. QLogic makes adapters for that segment or for that need, and we make them reliable, and we make them with broadly usable features at an affordable price point. And we do that for fiber channel as well as iSCSI. So we give customers the choice for what's their best fit for their needs.
Great. Sounds great. One last question. How was your pizza?
The pizza was good.
Pretty awesome. Domino's does a good job.
Yeah.
Listen, I hope everybody else out there as well enjoyed their pizza. For some reason, Domino's I know is all over the country, but there might be some guys in data centers buried under a mountain in Wyoming. And if you are and Domino's couldn't get you, we have either gift cards going out to you, or for some reason you had delivery delays, let us know. We can make it whole and make it right, because we certainly wanted to have a lunch with you today and do our virtual lunch and learn. Again, we do these every 2 to 4 weeks, cover a various amount of topics, and hopefully you find these enlightening, entertaining, and very useful to your everyday work environment. Thanks again to Rich with QLogic, and we'll see you next time on Tech Talks. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.